Well, thank you so much for coming to this session, everybody. I'm Suzanne McCotter. I'm the Dean of the School of Education at the College of New Jersey, and my colleague is Eileen Heddy.
Hi, everybody. I'm Eileen Heddy, and I am the Director of Support for Teacher Education Programs at TCNJ.
And we have a few slides that we think will kind of contextualize the conversation that we want to have, but really what we're hoping to do is to quickly move into a discussion. So I've been the dean at TCNJ for 5 years, and even before that, one of the things that weighed most heavily on me was the lack of diversity in teacher education. It's always been among the most important things, but as we all know, the things that are most important need to have a fire lit under them in order for them also to become the most urgent. So there are a couple things that have recently brought this kind of attention to diversifying the teacher pipeline have caused it to become very urgent. One of them is the lack of teachers, any kind of teachers in the teacher pipeline right now. All of us in teacher preparation programs have seen our applications decreasing. We've seen the number of teachers who are getting certified decreasing, and that is most prominent in our highest need areas, most prominent among teachers of color, most prominent among teachers who speak more than one language, most prominent among men in early childhood and elementary, and certainly among teachers of color. So it's pressing. I get emails every day from superintendents and supervisors and principals who are desperate for our graduates to start teaching immediately. The other thing that has helped accelerate the urgency of this is that the state, I'm not always a fan of things that happen in the state, but in this case, I'm really excited that they've helped us to think about ways that we can increase the urgency of this topic. They've pulled together a consortium of institutions of higher education, and I see some of my colleagues from other institutions are here too. I know you've been part of this as well. They've called together other institutions of higher education to really focus on increasing the ethno-racial diversity of teachers. So we're going to talk a little bit about about the context of the teacher pipeline and some of the things that we've been trying to do. And then we're hoping that we can enlist you and collaborate and get some ideas from one another, and that we can all think together about the best ways to do this. Now, let me just pause for one moment and say that the state is really focused on the ethno-racial diversity of teachers, which of course we are too, and we are also concerned about the other areas. We're concerned that we don't have enough gender diversity. We're concerned that we don't have enough age diversity, that we don't have enough linguistic diversity. So any kind of diversity is going to help us. Specifically, we're going to focus today on ethno and racial diversity, but we're also aware and eager to diversify in all different kinds of ways. So Eileen, I'm going to put myself on mute and let you talk for a little while.
All right, I'm only going to talk for a minute because I feel like everything that I'm sharing are things that we all kind of know, especially if we're already interested in this work. You can see the screen, right? Okay. So we know that 41% of U.S. students identify as African American or Latinx, but only about 15% of our teachers identify as African American or Latinx. The numbers have increased a little bit for Latinx teachers over the past several years, but the percentage of African American teachers has stayed pretty steady over the last couple of decades. 25% of all U.S. students speak a language other than English at home, but only 13% of teachers do. 83% are white, 76% female, and 24% male. At the elementary level, there's only 11% male, and at secondary, it's a little bit better. And the percentage of male public school teachers has actually decreased a little bit, just by 2 percentage points in the last couple of decades. And we also know that representation matters. The research is pretty clear that teachers of color make a difference, and not just for students of color, but also it makes a difference for white students too. They need that representation in their schools. And a number of different studies have shown that the racial diversity of teachers has a direct impact on the academic success of students. For example, in schools where the ethnic and racial distribution of the teachers approximated that of the students, there existed a significantly higher rate for passing high school graduation exams. Suzanne's going to talk about the statewide goals.
So the state has put together these draft goals, and that you can see that when you look at them that they go from entering the profession to staying in the profession. So their goal is that by 2025, which is right around the corner, all New Jersey students will have access to high quality novice teachers, and that the teaching population will reflect the race and ethnicity of the P-12 student population. So the percentages that Eileen shared were national percentages. In New Jersey, it's even more drastic. 80% of the teachers in New Jersey are white, and 50% or slightly over of our students are students of color. There are also goals for recruitment that starting 2 years ago, non-white candidates entering the preparation programs will increase by 5% annually. For graduates, completers of our programs, by 2025, the number of non-white certified teacher program completers will increase to 50%. Hiring, by 2025, the composition of hired non-white teachers will reflect the race and ethnicity of the P-12 student population. And retention, by 2025, non-white teachers will be retained at rates equal to their white peers. So these things, there are some things that higher education needs to work on, and other things that P-12 schools need to work on. And all of this, the more that we work on it together, the better we'll do. So the challenge from the state to us, to higher education, was to first take a really close look at what was happening on our campuses to identify gaps and strategies to where we're doing really well. So we, at the College of New Jersey, we went around, we talked to our admissions folks, we talked to marketing, we talked to our P-12 partners, we talked to our Inclusive Excellence division to try to figure out what are some things that we can do, what can we do quickly, and what's longer term. So here are some of the ideas that we came up with, and we're hoping by talking with you, we'll be able to add to this list after today. The first thing is targeted recruitment and campus visits. So we found out that our admissions office has a lot more information than we typically see. So they have a lot of information, for example, of anyone who, they buy these databases of kids who take the SATs and ACTs, and then they market to them. What we can do is we can start to filter down. So the highest diversity schools that typically send people, anybody who's ever had an interest in education, anyone who is from one of the areas that we're trying to recruit from. And rather than wait for the admissions office to do recruitment, we can do some outreach and partner that outreach with more than just a letter to them, but really, sponsor a day on campus. If you're interested in teaching, come to this campus, and really focusing our efforts on very diverse high schools. Of particular interest today is that Center for Future Educators does the Summer Educator Academy on the TCNJ campus. I'm saying on the TCNJ campus with my fingers crossed, because please let us do this in person this year. A week long, really focused on recruiting a diverse group of high school students who are interested in being teachers. So what we're going to try to do this year is pair that with some of the work that our current TCNJ students do, particularly in the area of STEM, so that we'll be able to quickly partner those high school students who come for this Summer Educator Academy with some of our current students at TCNJ. Stepping up our collaboration with school districts and focusing on some of the clubs and classes that all of you are involved in, those of you who are in P-12 districts. Visiting the Future Educator Academy clubs, having days on campus for juniors, really getting our students to be involved in those campus visits. And then moving to some of our longer term goals. One of them is connected to those campus visits. We can have our TCNJ teacher candidates mentor the middle school and high school students who are in the Future Educator clubs and start to make those long-term connections and think about the ways that they can do that. And finally, our long-term goal is a residency program. I mentioned one of the things we're really trying to think about is diversity of age and experience coming into the teaching profession. My strong belief about this is that we're not going to move the dial on recruiting more teachers if we continue to look at 18-year-olds who are just graduating from high school. We need to do other things like better articulation programs with community colleges, career changers, and residency programs where people who have just thought about going into teaching after college have a chance to do a residency program in schools. This is an intense collaboration with school districts. And this is one of the things that Sarah just mentioned. Adults who are career changers cannot drop out of their lives for a year without a salary. So we need to find a way to fund residency programs. And let me mention, I'm talking about TC&J initiatives, but from our perspective, a new teacher in New Jersey is a new teacher in New Jersey. And we hope that we can get the kind of synergies where it doesn't matter if they go to William Patterson, Montclair, Stockton, Rowan, TC&J, a new teacher is a new teacher. And the more we can a rising tide lifts all boats. So we hope that some of these ideas are ones that we can share with our sister institutions. So partnered with that, we want to think about retention. How once we get people to campus, it's not enough just to get people to campus to make that initial commitment to become a teacher. They have to follow through, finish the program, go through all of the hoops that the state requires, and actually become a teacher. So one of our things that we're starting to do right away is identify a cohort of candidates of color and really work closely with them to make sure that they're prepared to jump through all those hoops, that they've got a community, that they're working together, that there are some events specifically for candidates of color. We've started some peer mentoring programs, both for teacher candidates of color and for first generation college students in teacher education programs so that they can work together and find ways to mentor one another. A next step for us, this is kind of a middle effort, not short-term or long-term. We're going to start to recruit classroom teachers of color who can be mentors for our teacher candidates. That's one of the things that our current students have asked for, is they want to work with people who are already in the positions that they're seeking and really hear from them about the challenges and rewards of being a teacher of color. We know that it's not enough to say, we want you to stay. We have to do a better job. We've got to be really reflective about what we as faculty and teachers of these teachers of color, what we are doing to make sure that we are preparing them well. So we're really looking at what kinds of professional development our faculty members need around culturally responsive teaching so that we can model and create the kind of environments for these prospective teachers that we know is so important. I mentioned residency programs before. That's another important piece, not only of recruitment, but of retention. And finally, early college and dual enrollment programs. So we want to expand the idea of the Tomorrow's Teachers programs that all of you are working on, not only in teacher preparation, but all over the place. So TC&J has just started a collaboration with Trenton, Ewing, and Willingboro schools where we're doing early college and dual enrollment. And we're hoping that we can add in a teaching track to those programs so that we can really focus on the new teachers. So we're really eager to hear from you. So Eileen's going to share some questions for discussion, and then I think we'll as much as possible shut down the PowerPoint so we can talk to one another. But we'll actually, Eileen, as you're doing this, I'll post the questions in the chat too, so we'll all have access to them.
Our questions are, what have you found are the biggest barriers to encouraging students of color to consider a career in education? What can we do about those barriers? What are the most important factors that students of color consider when choosing a career and/or a college? What are some specific supports or strategies that work to retain students of color in higher ed or in education programs specifically? And how can we recruit and retain more teachers of color? We don't want to just have more teachers of color out in the field. We want to be able to support them while they're out there. And what can we do to support teachers in general?
But my name is Meg White. I'm an associate professor in the School of Education at Stockton. After looking at your slides, I believe in the last couple of months, we've had almost exactly the same conversations that you're having, and unfortunately, we all, I believe, have more questions than answers right now. But quick question for you. Do your dual enrollment teachers, do you require your dual enrollment teachers to have a master's degree?
We do require them to have a master's degree. and we're just starting out with this, Meg. So one of the conversations we're having right now, there is and being on a college campus, you can understand the differences here. There are people who insist that the master's degree has to be in the discipline that's being taught. So if you are teaching a calculus class that you'll get credit for at TCNJ, you need a master's degree in mathematics. And then other people who are saying you have to, any master's degree is okay. So a master's degree in education will satisfy that requirement. I'm on the side of a master's degree in education. I think that high school teachers who have master's degrees in mathematics are few and far between, and that does not necessarily make you a great teacher. So where a master's degree is required, the area in which a master's degree, that hasn't been settled yet.
My frustration is that we get requests from high school teachers in areas where we really want a tomorrow's teacher course, but they don't have a master's degree, so we can't support them as far as the dual credit is concerned. And I've gone back to faculty ad nauseum and asked them to lighten this restriction, and they're just adamant that because they have to be treated as an adjunct, and to be an adjunct in higher ed, you have to have a master's degree. So that I just wondered if anybody else has found a way around this, because I would really like to find a way around this and get more teachers involved.
Yeah. You know, the only place where I've found a way around that is in really specialized areas. So education would not be a specialized area, but for example, we offer American Sign Language classes, and many people who speak American Sign Language are people who are deaf, and traditional education has often been hard for people who are deaf. And it's such a specialized skill. So I've gotten a workaround in that specific area and only for teaching American Sign Language. So that, but it's all has to do with accreditation in middle states as well.
Right. I have more questions, but I don't want to take the floor if anybody else wants to.
Yeah, we'd love to hear about other people's ideas, where people are struggling, where what kinds of ideas they have, or reactions to some of our ideas too.
I have a question about the dual credit and the requirement for having a master's. Does the master's degree have to be related to a specific discipline, or can it be a master's in administration and supervision?
That's the conversation we're having on our campus right now, Teresa. So my husband is a teacher. He teaches chemistry and physics, and he does dual enrollment with Syracuse University, and his master's degree is in educational leadership, just what you were asking about. Syracuse University's requirement is that you have a master's degree in physics in order to teach the dual enrollment, but they are very liberal in making exceptions to that, especially if someone has taught AP classes and taught for a long time. I suspect that's where we are going to come down on that, but it's a matter of convincing our colleagues in the math department that a master's degree in education and years of experience is acceptable.
Yeah, because from experience, I have a master's in administration and supervision. I actually have master's plus 32, but I'm currently just 3 credits away from doing the master's for history. So that's why I ask. And many of the teachers within my district, my building, their masters are usually earmarked for administration and supervision, and not many are seeking it in the specific discipline.
Yeah, I think that is what we'll end up coming to after my institution delves more deeply into the reality of where teachers get their master's degrees and what areas. But we're still in the beginning stages. Now I saw, D Miller, I'm sorry, D, I don't know what your first name, and I don't know if you're male or female. Nix Miller, I see that you said you don't have a master's degree, but you have done Tomorrow's Teachers with Rider University. I wonder if there's anything else you can say about how that happened that would help.
Hello, Danielle.
Hi, Danielle.
So we only did Tomorrow's Teachers for 2 years. The first year, no one did the dual. And then the second year we did. So last year, 2 of my students got the dual credit. So like I reached out to them and I was like, I do not have a master's, but I've been teaching for 20 years. And they were flexible with that. So I don't know if that's should be the case with TC&J as well.
Yeah. And
I
Meg,
get it not having a novice teacher, right? But veteran teacher.
Meg, you might want to reach out to the folks at Ryder and see what they had to do to do that. I don't know if we've got anybody here today. And Sharon Sherman's usually the person I direct you to, but she just recently retired.
Okay, so my name is Steve Cullis. I'm the Option 2 coordinator at Randolph High School. And Option 2, and we have kids that take the Tomorrow's Teachers course, and then I help them with the teaching fieldwork afterwards, a full year. And so we've kind of really concentrated on getting ELL students into the program and trying to go into their classrooms. So we've done things like going to the ELL classrooms and talking to the students about career choices in teaching, specifically in order to try to get them to think about how important it is for a teacher who understands their culture, you know, to help the students out, and that they could be one of those teachers that understands what's, you know, their students are going through if they think about what their experiences were like. And we've done that. And then I've talked to the ELL teacher about coordinating with the media specialist in terms of doing a career, you know, investigation in terms of, you know, what the lifestyle and professional requirements of being a teacher are, so that those students can kind of take a look at those and do that. And then also, you know, as part of my thing too, you know, I've looked at, one of my things is that students take college coursework. And so trying to just get more ELL students into college coursework and taking college coursework and experiencing that during high school through the Challenger program that I go through CCM. I think other community colleges might have similar ones, but they do the Challenger program where they allow high school students to take college courses for high school for credit. And so trying to get that in, and I've encompassed a number of barriers for that. A lot of it having to do with colleges are requiring, you know, language and math, you know, skills in order to be able to take those courses. And in some cases, ELL students don't have that yet. So trying to get either more bilingual teachers at the college level in order to allow those kids to take the courses, or to have a AccuPlacer test being given for free, or for, you know, more often at the high school, so that they can kind of take the AccuPlacer and kind of test into those courses. So there's a number of barriers. And, you know, I've written up, I was looking at my sheet, I've written like 12 or 13 things that we're going to try to accomplish in terms of some of these things, but it was mostly concentrating on ELL students in terms of that stuff. But those are some of the barriers that I want, is just trying to get those kids to experience college and go to, you know, more of those students to go to college, so that they could kind of, you know, take that step into the professional world that, you know, that teachers are in.
I love that focus on English language learners, Steve. I think that's one of the places we've really ignored the need for diversity. So many of our students across the state, the P-12 students, are bilingual or trilingual, and most of our teachers are monolingual. And we have to start viewing that and seeing it as a strength rather than some bizarre.
Well, you know, part of it came from my wife is in a position where she's an administrator, and so she was having such a difficult time hiring a bilingual teacher. So just having a discussion with her and knowing that, you know, we have that those ELL community in my school. You know, I've never gone to them to talk about the Tomorrow's Teachers program or the teaching program, you know, or the pathway, you know, because the pathway starts really with the child development courses when they're sophomores or freshmen, that they could start doing that. So really that's kind of the time to kind of get them in the early years to take those child development courses, the whole pathway, whatever the requirements are to get to that Tomorrow's Teachers course, you know, that's where you really got to get to these kids. So it was like, I've never done that, like stupid me, you know, I mean, it's like, it seems so obvious. And so that's when I did it for the first time this year, and I'm going to do it every year. So working closely with the ELL teachers in terms of just, you know, getting the students to be aware that this is an option for them, and there's a huge need, and they'd be really helping out their, you know, community by doing it as well.
That's a great strategy.
I can add to something that Mr. Cullis just talked about. I met with, at my sabbatical has begun, and so I'm at the DOE, and I met with recruitment and certification. And one of the things that they discussed with me was the importance of the message that we send out. And when we talk about teacher shortage, they really emphasize that in some areas, New Jersey does not have a teacher shortage, but there is a shortage in those areas: bilingual education, special ed, those world languages. So we don't have this program yet in my district. That's kind of my mission, to help create this form of a pathway in East Orange. And so my sabbatical involves exploring all of this. But what happens is that when you are encountering those students that you already have in your programs, as Mr. Cullis mentioned, reaching out to those in those specified areas of need where there will be perhaps an opportunity for employment when they complete the program. And in response to one of your questions about what are the most important factors that students of color consider when choosing a career or college, I know within my district, there are students who immediately gravitate to the money, right? They want to know what the income will be, besides the usual retort that, no, I don't want to be a teacher. You know how bad the kids can be. So because they're talking from their own possible experiences. But when choosing their colleges, my students have spent most of their lives within a particular environment, meaning, New Jersey has this system similar in many ways to like the apartheid schools, where our districts are not extremely heterogeneous culturally, ethnically, racially. So they're fearful. They won't say they're fearful, but it's more uncomfortable choosing a school where they feel there won't be many students like themselves. So I think having your programs where you're going to connect people who come to the campus, where there can be a reflection of students already there who they can connect to, who are similar to them, to their cultural and ethnic backgrounds, I think will make a world of difference.
I hope so, Teresa. That's one of our goals. And I'll tell you, one of the most interesting conversations that we had as we were going around our campus, and Eileen, I don't remember if you were at the conversation with communication and marketing. So we were talking with communications and marketing about what they can do to help us with recruitment. And they said that it's something they really struggle with, that one of their push-pulls is that they want to make sure that they are both putting forth the image of a place that is welcoming and diverse and incorporates a lot of different differences onto the campus, and not selling people a false bill of goods, that we don't want to feature all of our students of color. And then when people get there, well, that's only a tiny proportion. So how do we both advertise our aspirations and our reality and move closer to our aspirations as we're doing it? So we definitely didn't come up with any answers for that, but it was a really interesting thing to hear from marketing about how they struggle with the same kinds of things.
When Teresa was talking, it was, other states have one pay scale for the entire state, right? But it doesn't really matter where you don't have teachers shopping around for the highest salary, but most of the highest salaries, in New Jersey, if teachers are chasing that, are in the white suburban areas. And so, what you'll have is you may have teachers of color, but they're in those schools, and they're not, in the urban schools where maybe the pay may be, a little bit less because of the tax, setup or whatever the case is. So, that's one of the difficulties that you have in getting, minority teachers teaching minorities. So
I think in New Jersey, it may not be the case that they're off in the suburbans, that people of color like myself would be off in the suburban school districts, because I would be very interested in the data on the demographics. I live in Randolph. So my children have gone through the school system. My daughter is a teacher currently for 7 years. She's been a teacher, special ed. And my son went through, and they both graduated from TCNJ, by the way. So very proud of that. But I know from my personal experience being in my school district since 1994, that this district does not have sizable representation of diversity. So and again, there is salary. We can talk about salaries. I met with someone from the Teacher Salary Project nationwide trying to work to raise the starting salaries. In New Jersey, relatively, we are in that top 6, I think, of the states whose starting salaries are okay. But you're right, the big money may be in like Westfield. I think they may have gone to $74,500 as a starting salary. But if you follow the money, this is where the retention comes in. Teachers who are people of color are not in those districts because they also worry about support. And we talk about Black male teachers and using teachers of colors in positions that they did not sign up for, becoming the disciplinarian, becoming, earmarked for specific tasks. So once people go into the field, they do need retention, they do need mentoring, they do need support. The same things that you've outlined to help potential future educators. It really needs to be in place for novice teachers as well, because I work with people who may contemplate switching a district, but they hesitate in applying to some of the suburban districts, regardless of what the salaries may be, So you need to keep and retain people across the state in all the different geographic regions.
Come at it, I'm looking at, that first question that says, what is one of the challenges? And I am an agricultural education teacher, so I'm in the career tech ed area. And, one of the big challenges we have, and we in New Jersey, I believe we have 53 agriculture teachers, and there are 12 of them who are, could retire within the next 2 years. So one of the challenges we face is, the typical stereotype of, oh, if you're in agriculture, you are white. And so therefore, the students in the program who might be inspired to be the future teachers don't have that model and that example, which just brings us to that whole circle of, okay, we need to be diversified. So there are examples for people, but we don't have the diversity actually in our program area to some extent to then be the example for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that we find that there are fields that are similar to that, Robin, where we're really trying to, again, balance the reality with the aspiration and bring people in who really have to be pioneers, have to be trailblazers so that we can make this start at diversifying. If you have other ideas, we'd love to hear about them. One of the things that we mentioned was trying to create some visiting opportunities to campuses for people who are interested, those kinds of things. So if you think that you've got a group of students who might be interested in that kind of visit, we would love to set it up. And if you're not in the TCNJ area, I see I have colleagues on here from Kane, from Stockton, from William Patterson. I'm sure they would be interested in setting up those kinds of opportunities on their campuses too, if you're closer to them. As I said, this is a rising tide lifts all boats situation. So please reach out if you're interested, or if you have colleagues who might be interested in working with us on those kinds of things. Eileen, do you want to say anything?
No, I was just going to ask if anybody had some last thoughts. I was particularly interested to hear, people's ideas about what the barriers are, and what we could do to address them. So if it's something that you think about afterwards, or you have conversations with your students, sometimes if this is kind of brewing in your head and you ask your students and they say some interesting things, we'd love to hear them.
In the list that you provided earlier in one of the slides of all of the things that we need to consider, I'm wondering if you've had a conversation about prioritizing those, because I often feel like we just don't know where to like start. What's the most important thing? Do we start with recruitment? Do we start with dual enrollment? Do we start with, you know, campus visits? I will admit I've been on this for a number of years and often feel overwhelmed that this is becoming more and more of a daunting task and having trouble getting started, if you will.
I think we're starting with the low hanging fruit. We're starting with the data that our admissions office has that we can start to mine. And we're going to try, again, you know, who knows if we can bring groups of people to campus, but if we can bring a group of students to campus this spring, a group of high school juniors to campus, we're going to start with that. And then from there, we're hoping that that can be a launch pad for some of the other things we want to try, like setting up mentoring relationships. So that feels like easier to wrap our heads around than creating a residency program, but we're also trying to make some strides in that direction.
Right.
I think, you know,
Suzanne.
something else, another, you know, piece of low hanging fruit is supporting the students of color that we do have, making sure that they feel supported and welcomed and successful.
Can I just ask, I teach tomorrow's teachers at a high school, and I'm just curious if there are scholarships for students that you might recruit to be teachers. So if I had a student of color who wants to become a teacher, are there connections to help them that might help them see that that path is possible instead of it feeling like overwhelming and daunting in terms of, you know, choosing a school and looking at the financial end of becoming a teacher?
So TCNJ has increased their scholarships for all students this year. I think a lot of places are doing that, trying to increase their aid. And we do have small scholarships that are available for students. One of the things that I've been focused on a lot over the past couple of years, and let me just say, by the way, if you need to step off, go ahead and step off. If you want us to share slides with you, just drop your email address in the chat before you leave and we'll get them to you, but I'll keep talking as long as anybody's here. So it costs students up to $1,500 who want to be teachers over and above all of their tuition, you know, for certification, for getting a substitute license. So although there's financial aid that's available or other kinds of scholarships, there's the Teach grant that's available for people who want to be teachers for tuition. Nothing's available for those collateral costs. And students sometimes, they learn about the EdTPA and the cost of certification and all those things, even though we've told them and told them and told them, when they really find out what they're going to have to pay to become a teacher in their senior year, they leave the classroom in tears because they just can't afford it. They also have to stop working and figure out transportation and get a new wardrobe and all those other things. So I've been really focusing a lot of my fundraising efforts on some of those collateral costs. We've got some scholarships and we've got a financial aid office, but we don't have any way to help with those things. So I've been really trying to raise funds for all of those extra things.
And I think that's one thing that they do with the, you know, with the students that have gone to that summer Urban Teachers Academy in the past. That's been a big part of that, you know, just kind of fostering all those things and mentoring those students on all the things that they need to do to get into college and, you know, and then be successful as well. But I think that could be expanded. I think that's a great area to expand for the CFE.
Thank you all so much for spending some time with us today. We're happy to be among a group of like-minded people who have the same priorities and hoping that by putting our heads together, we'll be able to make a dent in this really important thing. So Thank you all so much. Really appreciate it.